But I want to start primarily with your first official position, and that was at a company called XL Mobile Distribution. What did the company do, and what exactly was your role there?
So that company started with brand new iPhones. When the iPhones would first come out, there was a limit of how many iPhones you're able to buy, and we would get people to buy for us. And we would pay them a markup, and then we would go ahead and sell it around the world to other buyers in other countries. And the business grew over the years, different iPhones to other brands to selling on e-commerce, new, refurbished. I was a partner in that company.
So when you say iPhone, you're talking about the iPhone 1?
So I think we didn't start with that. We started some of the later versions, I think 4 or 4S.
And were you not able to make a bulk purchase from Apple directly?
No, and because the stock was so limited, and such a high demand, you were only able to buy 2 at a time or 4 at a time. I think maybe at one point it was up to 10 at a time. So we utilized the buyer's network, friends, family, friends of family, to everyone would purchase themselves, and then we would buy it from them, and then they would go ahead and we would go ahead and resell it in other countries where it wasn't available.
And has that limit changed with Apple today?
The program has changed. I still think there is still a buyer's network for different products, maybe on release day when stock is still limited, but they tend to have done a better job to have more supply both in the US and also around the world, which put a pressure on that market and is not as relevant as it used to be.
So to confirm, Apple would release, let's say, the iPhone 4. You guys would go out to your buyer's network and say, purchase as many iPhones as you could get your hands on, and we would pay you a markup?
Correct.
Was it a set markup of like $100 per iPhone?
I don't remember what it was, but it usually was a set per iPhone. I don't think it was ever high as 100, but there were definitely times where it was $50, $60 per iPhone.
And then you guys would take that inventory and you would sell it on platforms like Amazon, eBay, and maybe your own website?
So in the beginning, we would sell it strictly overseas because it used to only be released in the US or US and Canada, but it wasn't released in a lot of other countries, especially like in Dubai or in Hong Kong or in Australia. So we would sell it to buyers in those countries, wholesale, and then those distributors would then either sell it on their own websites or their own stores, and then customers could buy it from them.
So you were brought onto the team as a partner, and you mentioned that you were able to increase the company's sales significantly from 17 to 25 million. What were some key strategies that you implemented to be able to achieve this goal?
A lot of it was developing relationships with buyers as well as suppliers. And we developed good relationships because we've always kept our word, even if we meant that, the cell phone industry changes very, very fast. But if once we gave our word, we always kept to it, even if it meant that we would lose money because the pricing dropped, or even if pricing went up, we wouldn't go charge our buyers anymore. Our word was our word, and that's what really helped grow in the industry. But also just spending a lot of time finding new buyers, finding new customers, finding new distributors, spending a lot of time on LinkedIn and trade shows, and just trying to network as much as possible to develop those relationships and find those relationships.
Did it happen frequently? Because as you continue to grow, the less oversight you have of who you're bringing on as buyers. Were there any complications during your period there that a buyer would say that they purchased something, they would ship it, you would send them the money, but they never actually shipped it? Or did you guys know all your buyers very well?
We generally knew them pretty well, whether it was we took good references before we would wire anybody money, or we'd actually use at many times a 3PL to facilitate. So we would have the buyer send the goods to a 3PL. We would go to a 3PL, inspect it, or get a report from them, and then wire the money to the vendor, or vice versa. If we were selling to a buyer, we would use a 3PL so they can inspect it, pay us, and then release them the goods. So it took away a lot of risk. Nothing stands out that we got majorly screwed or ripped off from anybody, thank God.
So after some time there, I believe it was about a little under 8 years, right?
I was there for about 10 years or so, close to 10 years.
Wow. And then you transitioned to a company called BBQ Trading, which I
Yep.
believe is also in the consumer electronics industry as well.
Correct. It's similar. So I started my own company where we just focused on wholesale of phones. So it's not really dealing with the new iPhones anymore, not the newest and hottest products. It's generally more still brand new, but liquidations from manufacturers, liquidations from distributors. If a distributor, it's the end of the quarter, end of the year, they want to get rid of some inventory, we'll go ahead and buy these big lots and then sell them over time in smaller lots, whether that's to distributors in other countries or whether that's to online channels or customers that are buying from us to sell online. So the distributor or the manufacturer gets their cash right away. They've just moved on from it, and then we'll take it and make our margin and sell it slowly over time.
So I'm sure you pick up on there's a big trend, at least with making money online, with teenagers and people in their young 20s. A big market is definitely flipping iPhones. So taking iPhones that have like a cracked screen that people are selling for a significant discount and then repairing it. Did you ever
Yeah.
consider going into that field?
So with the previous company with Excel Mobile, we did a lot of used or refurbished iPhones or cell phones in general that we would have purchased after that was already done. The used business is a very complicated business. What is one person considered to be nice? What is one person considered to be good? What is one person considered to be okay? There's a heavy amount of returns, also a huge amount of fraud. It's a very small margin business. So I've kind of decided, with this new company is that we're not doing that. We're just focusing on brand new. The issues are very, very minimal. There's still some defective, but you're not worried about grading or any other types of headaches that come from the used market.
So having been in the consumer electronics industry for 15 years, and I believe you're still going with BBQ trading.
Yes, correct.
What are some observations that you've picked up in the industry?
With e-commerce, it's constantly changing. You got to really always be on your A game. If you're not on top of your game, you're going to fall behind. So whether that means finding new suppliers, whether that means finding new marketplaces, whether that means finding new marketing strategies, making sure that you're really on top of your numbers, especially if you're selling on the marketplaces. There's a lot of hidden fees that are not, inventory goes missing, or Amazon has all these types of fees, storage fees. And I recently saw someone on LinkedIn didn't realize that, there's Amazon charges higher storage fees during Q4, and they woke up one morning and got a $26,000 storage bill, not realizing. So making sure that you're really on top of everything is extremely important in e-commerce, especially as there's more competition and margins get tighter and tighter. You really have to watch everything. I think that's the number one. If you're not on top of your numbers and you don't have unlimited money, you can spiral out of control very fast.
Yeah, 100%. So there's definitely a common trend that I've found personally with the founders of fulfillment companies, 3PLs that I've spoken to, where they tend to be e-commerce specialists before, whether they own a company themselves or they worked in the e-commerce space, and they had a very bad interaction with the 3PL partners that they worked with. And when I was doing research on you, the first thing that came to mind was Frankly Fulfillment, which is the name of your company. Now,
Right.
frankly means to be upfront and to be honest.
Right.
And your experience with consumer electronics and having people ship things to your 3PL, having them ship them out of country, I'm assuming that there were some bad experiences that you had that made you decide to open up your own and to give the customers the experience that you were looking for when you had a 3PL partner.
Correct.
So I want to talk a little bit about how your previous experience influenced you to establish and to ultimately come up with the Frankly Fulfillment philosophy that you currently do.
Yeah, so we had a lot of different experiences. I've used many different 3PLs over the years. There's definitely been some good ones. There's some been not so good ones. What I tried doing, what led me to here was when I started, BBQ trading, I was using only 3PLs. With Excel Mobile, we had our own warehouses. We utilized 3PLs when we were trying to facilitate, a deal with a new buyer, but we had our own warehouses primarily. Whereas with BBQ, my strategy was I don't want to be in the warehouses. I want to just focus on the growth of my business and was using 3PLs. And just as thank God we continue to grow, we ran into some friction with that. And, then decided to take what I've learned by using 3PLs, having my own warehouse for close to 15 years, being in the e-commerce space and being able to hopefully deliver a transparent product, a good experience for our customers. And I believe that our customers would share that they are experiencing that. No 3PL is going to be perfect. No human is perfect. So by definition, 3PL, is not going to be perfect. But I think that we, can own up to when things are not perfect, and our customers appreciate that. They appreciate that transparency, and we always work to get better with that.
Were you planning on opening up a 3PL for a while and then just finally pulled the trigger on it, or was enough and then you just decided that you had to do it yourself?
So I actually was not planning to open a 3PL. When I decided that I need to leave the 3PL that I was at, I was actually thinking I was just going to rent a place, my own little spot, just for my business, and just call it a day. But living in New York, rent here is just so expensive, and I couldn't find anything within any normal distance that made sense. So as I kept on getting further and further out, I realized that I'm not going to be able to be there every day anyways. I'm not able to manage it myself. I'm going to have to hire a management team and put together a good team. So once I'm doing that, then the conversation kind of evolved to, okay, now let's go into a 3PL. Let's take the experience that we have, what we learned, and start a 3PL so others can benefit as well. And that's where one thing led to the next, and that's where we are.
So Why Cincinnati?
So Cincinnati is a very central location for e-commerce. It's pretty central. We can hit most of the U.S. with a ground service within 2 to 3 days. So it's pretty central. There's a UPS hub very close by in Louisville. Real estate is not expensive. Labor is not super high like it is in New York or California or other regions. And also my family is there. My parents still there. I have some siblings that still live there. So it's just selfishly it's a good spot to be. When I do fly in, I have a free meal and a free hotel. But we was looking at many different places. We found a place there that fit what we're looking for, and just all the pieces fell together, and decided to pull the trigger and start in Cincinnati.
You live in New York, and your fulfillment center is in Cincinnati, and you now have a daunting task of finding someone that's truly reliable, that acts as the active CEO in Cincinnati, in the location, managing. How did you go about finding that person?
It took a little bit of time for all the pieces to fall into place. David is now our director of warehouse operations. When I had first met him, I actually had no idea that he knew my family. But it turns out, after I had interviewed him, actually for a different position in the company, he knew my family, and he took over this position. He didn't start in as director of warehouse operations, but we were able to see that he was definitely very trustful, cared about the business. Even though his position wasn't operations to begin with, you could see that he was, getting involved in all aspects of the company and was trying to learn about the business. And just then the position evolved where he became the director of warehouse operations, and today he's running it from top to bottom. He built a team under him, and it's, thank God, orders are going out every day, inventory is being received every day, and it's running pretty smooth.
What would you
So
say?
it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy getting to where it didn't happen overnight.
I mean, it's hard to find in general, an employee that can take on so much responsibility, but how much more so when the CEO is not even in the same state. So remote is a very hard task to manage. And I wonder if you have like specific insights or tips on how to manage a team remote.
It's definitely hard. In the beginning, when I started, frankly, I was in Cincinnati very often because it was a brand new business, and also just getting the team in place and making sure everybody's aligned with the same goals and the same, being on the same team. Now I'm there much less, still there because it is my business, and I want to make sure that things are running smooth and everything is going well. But I don't need to be there, on a twice a week basis or bi-weekly basis because things are running smooth. It's more I'm just going down just to check in and see how we can improve, as opposed to just trying to keep the business from keeping us on its legs. But we have calls every day. We have weekly calls with the entire team, so they don't feel that I'm just some random dude in New York, but they could all interact with me and we could have discussions. And the team they all have my information, like my contact information, and they can reach out at any time, whether it's calling or whether it's emailing. So even though I am remote, they still feel that I'm a reachable person, and I'm not some scary monster that only pops in once every month. But it definitely has this struggles being remote. It's definitely wasn't easy, but today I think we're in a very good spot. Thank God.
What were some challenges that stick out to you in the formative years of Frankly Fulfillment?
Well, I still would say that we're still in the formative years. We're only just past 2 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're still new. We're still growing. Some of the challenges have been acquiring new customers. It's where do you put the marketing dollars? How do you get, everyone's chasing that elusive, high volume, low SKU count customer. And those are definitely hard to get. But how do you get other customers? Because again, without customers, there's no business. That was definitely a challenge, and still is not as much of a challenge, but still is a challenge. That was a significant one. Building the team, getting to the team where we are today was definitely a challenge. And again, like I said, I think today we're in a very good spot, thank God. And I think a challenge for me was how do I balance my time? Obviously, with having another business, how do I make sure that this doesn't take over my entire self from morning to night? And in the beginning, it definitely did. Just being a new business, it really took me over. At night I was busy with it, in the morning I was busy with it, during the day I was busy with it. Whereas now, we've built up the team and built up enough customers where we can continue to build out the team, and it hasn't become a 24/6 business for me. It's now, I'm still glued to it. I'm still, I have the cameras, I'm still constant communication, I'm still reviewing the emails, and I haven't checked out, not in any way, but it's not all consuming. I can be at home with my kids, I can be at home with my family, and I can take a weekend off, or, I can take a day off to spend some time with my wife, and the business is still running smoothly. Whereas in the beginning, that would be impossible.
Right. It's all hands on deck.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because when you start a business, right, your name is on the line, and it's very, very important to you that things run exactly the way you want them to be ran. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of founders, specifically in the 3PL space, one of the key areas where they struggle in is when it comes to time management, in the sense that it's hard to give off the responsibility to somebody else and you kind of take a step back. But in order for the business to grow, you start off as the marketing guy, the sales guy, the pick and pack guy, the shipping negotiator. But then as time comes along, you kind of have to put people in the right seats so you can take a step back and really focus on the core of the business. So are you in charge of sales and marketing right now for the company?
Yeah. Yeah. I still run that.
Okay. And like you said, a lot of people are chasing after the same customers with the low SKU counts, high volume,
Right.
and they are definitely hard to come across. How do you keep up to date? And if there's any, I don't want you to reveal to me your secret sauce, but just in general, how you go about finding customers and cultivating relationships.
So today it's really all about building relationships. In the beginning, when we started, we were doing Google Ads, and we were just drowning, just flushing money down the toilet. Whereas today, it's really all about relationships. So whether it's friends of our customers, whether it's warehouses that we've interacted because we picked up goods from those warehouses, or a customer was moving from one 3PL to another 3PL, so we're in contact with that old 3PL that they were at and say, hey, do you have any other leads that maybe you don't want, or kind of lead sharing, whether it's working with um, there's many different people in the e-commerce industry, so we've created different partnerships with, whether it's brand agencies, whether it's someone that's auditing shipping rates, whether it's companies like yourself that do kind of in the help customers find 3PLs. So we've gone really like just hardcore focus on building those relationships as opposed to just throwing money out, but building relationships where it's when we get a lead, we know that we have all information up front. It's almost qualified, and we can say, hey, this is not a good fit or this is a good fit, and then have those conversations. We have a network of about probably 60 or 70 other 3PL owners. We have a Slack group, and we all share leads. Or if we recently had a lead that wasn't a fit for us, and posted on the group, hey, I have this lead. Anybody, there's a fit for anybody, and people will join in and say, hey, I'm interested, and we'll pass on the lead, and vice versa. They'll get leads that are not fit for them, and maybe it's a good fit for us, and we'll speak to them. But we really found this all about, at the end of the day, it's just a relationship, and that's how we're getting the leads that we have today.
It's interesting that you say that. I wonder if it's specific in the 3PL space, because usually when people start businesses, it's not a good habit, but they look at other companies as competitors. And competitors, everything has to be, don't share too much information, kind of be friendly. But now that you guys built like this ecosystem of sharing leads, do you think it's specific to 3PLs, or have you seen this also in your previous positions?
I mean, I've always looked at, in general business, I've always looked as quote unquote competitors as potential business partners. In the previous businesses, I have bought from people that I would consider my competitor. So it's never good to just write off somebody because they're in the same space as you. Sure, are there leads that we're fighting over or deals that we're fighting over? Sure, but there's so much more that we can gain by growing with each other, whether that's sharing leads or sharing tips or having questions or how do we deal with this, or sharing vendors. In the previous business, we wouldn't necessarily share vendors or share customers, but in the 3PL space, we definitely found I'm sure there are plenty that won't share, but I think at the end of the day, when we all share and we all grow together, we all benefit, right? Unfortunately, in the 3PL world, there are some slimy operators which are giving the 3PL world a bad name. And when we all come together and can decide that we want to, have a certain way that we deal with our customers in a more of a customer service centric approach and work together as partners, we can hopefully together change that name, change that vision that there is in the world that 3PLs are slimy and are bad, because we all work together, and when there's issues with each other, we help each other out. And yeah, so I wouldn't look at competitors as people I won't talk to. We have a lot to share with each other, a lot to gain with each other. There's a competitor, quote unquote competitor, that we're sharing. First of all, one, that we use their software, right? They built a software, we're using their software. But even other 3PLs, we're trying to build out different integrations, and they're like, oh, let's build it out together, right? And we'll both benefit from it, or sharing tips, and I think it just overall we all gain from it, and nobody's losing out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a never-ending amount of brands out there. So, so long as there's proper collaboration and you guys are the forefront to breaking the stigma of 3PLs, I think there'll
Yeah.
be plenty of business going around for everybody. I want to wrap up our conversation by getting into two personal questions. The first question is, what is your favorite quote, and why does that resonate with you?
It's the favorite quote, and so shout out to my brothers. It is what it is. Um, um, we actually joke that we want to start a podcast together. Is called "It Is What It Is." I feel like that we can't control. There's so many things out of our control, and if we let it bog us down, we're gonna get bogged down by it and not gonna be able to focus on getting out of whatever it is that happened. And we do need to accept that bad things do happen. Good things hopefully happen more often than bad. But those situations are, it is what it is, and now let's move on and move on to the next thing that needs to happen. Whether it's in business that you had a deal that you lost, whether it's in the news or whatever it is what it is, and let's continue. Let's grow from it and go from there.
The second question that I have, and I just want to preface by saying that the answer doesn't have to be, frankly, fulfillment. It's more to, if there's any outside hobbies that you have that you would want to get into. If you won the lottery tomorrow and money was no object, what would you spend your day doing?
There's definitely a lot of charities I would love to be involved in and love to support. So I think that would be a significant one if money was no object. But outside of that and business, I would love to learn how to fly a plane. That's something that I've just always wanted to do. That's probably a big one.
I
Takes a
love
lot of
that.
time. Yeah, definitely out of the box. But it's definitely something that I would love to do. I just don't have the time to do it.